Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblymember Cole. Dickman. Edgeworth. Gonzalez. Hibbets. Howdigi. Miller. Monroe Moreno. Moore. Nadeem. Chair Mosca.
Thank you so much, and we can mark Assemblymember Hattigi present as she arrives, and Assemblymember Moore absent excused. So welcome to the audience in Carson City, those joining by video conference, and those listening over the internet. I will start with some housekeeping announcements. Please silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state and spell your name for the record. There are hard copies of the meeting materials available for members of the public. Members of the public may also access electronic copies of the materials on the Nevada Legislature's website. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting, and each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the meeting. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if we don't agree with one another. And finally, members will be using their laptops to view materials, so please do not see that as a sign of inattention or disrespect. And with that, we will start the hearing on SB 419. I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 419. This measure revises provisions relating to state financial administration. We have Senator Dondero Loop and LCB staff presenting SB 419, or also called our chair of our Senate Finance Committee. You may start when you are ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Senator Marilyn Dondero Loop, and I represent Senate District 8 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 419 today. With me is Wayne Thorley, Senior Fiscal Analyst with LCB Fiscal, and Michael Nakamoto, Chief Principal Deputy Fiscal Analyst with LCB Fiscal. They are both here to answer questions that I can't. So, Senate Bill 419 is a committee bill from the Senate Committee on Finance, for which I am the chair. This bill is pretty simple. It makes 2 changes. First, it changes the date of the Economic Forum that is held during the regular legislative sessions from on or before May 1st to on or before April 1st. The current May 1st date was put into statute before the adoption of the 120-day session constitutional limit. The 120-day session limit puts sine die generally in early June, which means there is only about a month between May Economic Forum meeting and the end of session to make changes to the state budget based upon the updated general fund revenue forecast from the Economic Forum. The change to April 1st would give the legislature more time to make any necessary changes to the state budget after the Economic Forum meeting. Second, the bill authorizes the director of the Legislative Council Bureau to enter into any contract necessary to assist the Economic Forum and the Technical Advisor Committee on future state revenues in carrying out their duties, including contracts for revenue forecasting and data processing services. The state, through the executive branch, already enters into various contracts to assist the Economic Forum in the carrying out of its duties. This bill would simply change the administration of those contracts to the Legislative Council Bureau. That's it, and it's pretty simple. I always hate to say that, but thank you, Chair Mosca, for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 419, and they stand to answer any questions that you may have.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Senator, and I want to thank Mr. Nakamoto as well for your great work with the Economic Forum. We're great to see you the week after that. So we'll start with questions, and we'll go to Vice Chair Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for being here. So I don't sit on Ways and Means or the money stuff. So I was kind of wondering what was the thought process of moving it up to April and possibly not sooner?
Wayne Thorley for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. As a member of the Legislative Council Bureau, I'm not here to support or oppose any legislation, but here to answer questions or provide any clarity needed. The as the chair stated, the move to April 1st would give the money committees more time to make adjustments to the budget, the governor's recommended budget, before the end of session. As far as why not sooner, the December so there already is an existing December forecast that the governor uses in preparing his budget. In order to have a number of months between the December forecast and the forecast that occurs during session, so that there's more data available with which to make updated forecasts, it wouldn't work to go much earlier than that. And then since the Fiscal Analysis Division, jointly with the Governor's Finance Office, is staff to the Economic Forum, it worked we had to work it into our existing legislative duties too. So that's kind of the date that worked within that.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is on. Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair actually asked my question, but this leads me to another question based on your response. So I know this year is a very extreme example because we are dramatically different from December until now. However, how often is there a dramatic difference, and is that difference dramatic enough to still support not moving it up earlier during the session?
Thank you, Assemblymember Miller, for the question. For the record, Michael Nakamoto, that's Nakamoto with the Fiscal Analysis Division. Mr. Thorley already gave the disclosure, ditto to that. To answer your question, in my tenure as staff to the Economic Forum, which is now going on 20 years, this last Economic Forum meeting last week was only the second time where there was a downward revision between December and May. More often than not, there is an upward revision. In terms of it being a drastic change, generally speaking, no. We don't get enough information, and there's not usually significant movement in the economy or in the revenues to warrant significant changes. But there is, anytime that we have additional information as forecasters, we always appreciate that. But the switch between having the meeting on or before May 1st to on or before April 1st, we will give up a little bit of information, but it's some of the monthly revenues, such as the sales tax, the live entertainment tax, and so on. The quarterly taxes, specifically the insurance premium tax and the modified business tax, we already have the second quarter of information. We don't get any additional information. So in this instance, we feel, or at least I feel as staff, that the benefit to the process and giving the money committees the extra month outweighs us getting that extra month of information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is, I guess, sort of procedural. As I understand it, like Ways and Means, and I assume Senate Finance as well, they have a process of closing budgets, and I think that some of those happened before the Economic Forum's report on May 1st. So will any of this change when those budgets get closed? And then also, I think counties have a budget closing process that doesn't always align with what we do here in the state either. I've heard some comments before from people that there's an issue there. So I'm just wondering if any of that gets addressed or changed. Thank you.
Wayne Thorley, for the record, LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. Historically, the money committees, both Ways and Means and Finance, have started closing budgets in early April of a legislative session. What we mean by closing is actually making budgeting decisions based on the governor's recommended budget. The vast majority, so the Economic Forum was held last week on Thursday, on May 1st. The vast majority of the budgets in the executive budget were closed prior to that. Had this change been in place, the Economic Forum would have occurred before any budgets were closed in the money committees. As far as local governments, the Economic Forum makes general fund revenue forecasts for state revenue sources and not local government sources. So as far as I'm aware, this would have no impact on that.
Thank you. Next, Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you. I am on Ways and Means, as you well know, and I still don't understand exactly how all this works. So my question is, we saw on Thursday, the Economic Forum came out and they gave us the projected revenue for the general fund, but then also the education fund. Would this change also affect the release of the education fund numbers? And does the Economic Forum do that, or is that just a separate thing that comes out at the same time? I'm not sure how that works.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember Hibbets. Michael Nakamoto for the record. The statutory requirement for the Economic Forum is to do forecasts for the unrestricted state general fund only. The forecasts for the state education fund are not within that process. That is a consensus forecast that is done between the Fiscal Analysis Division and the Governor's Finance Office. It just happened to be because of the timing of the closing of the K-12 budgets this week that we needed to have those forecasts done simultaneously. We keep them aligned. We use the state 2% general fund sales tax to translate that into the collections for the local school support tax so that there is consistency between the two. It just happened to be because of all the timing, those happened on the same day. So we put those out, had that forecast completed and had that put out the same day. But that process would not change under this bill.
Just to clarify, so we pass this and we do the Economic Forum on April 1st, next session. We wouldn't have the K-12 numbers or the school fund numbers until later. Is that what I'm getting?
Assemblymember Hibbets, Michael Nakamoto for the record. The answer that I can give you is it depends. And ultimately it depends on the Chair of Senate Finance, the Chair of Assembly Ways and Means, and fiscal staff and the calendar and when the K-12 budgets would close. I think we would all have to sit down and determine what the revised closing schedule is for the budgets. And then the timing of that state education fund forecast would follow. It doesn't necessarily have to align with the April 1st or the May 1st. It would be really what the demands of the session and the closings would be.
Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Seeing none, we will move on to testimony. We will start for testimony in support of SB 419. As a reminder, each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record, which helps our committee secretaries, and make sure our comments are to the bill and not the bill's sponsor. Members of the public may provide testimony in person or over the phone. If you're here in Carson City, please start filling the tables or Las Vegas, and I will start by just saying the call-in number. It's 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 856-0626-0755. We will start here in Carson City.
Kent Irvin, Kentervin for the Nevada Faculty Alliance. This isn't really a faculty issue, but just as a longtime observer of the budget process and how hard it is and how stressed it is at the end of sessions, I think this is a good idea to move the date forward. Also, it would be even better if the Economic Forum or some other public process published and forecast the state education fund, because as we've just learned, that's a big part of the overall budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no others in Las Vegas and seeing no one approach the table seeing no others in Carson City, seeing no others in Las Vegas. AVH, can we open the phone lines for support of SB 419?
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for support at this time.
Thank you. We will now move to testimony in opposition to SB 419. Seeing no one come to the table in Carson City and seeing no one coming to the table in Las Vegas, AVH, we will open the phone lines for opposition to SB 419.
If you would like to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams, OSCARWILLIAMS. I am opposed to SB 419. As the old saying goes, the buck stops here, and it stops in the hands of an elected official. This bill takes authority away from the governor and concentrates it into the hands of the director of the Legislative Commission, an appointed position. We have a treasurer, we have a comptroller, the governor, and I don't see why the director of the Legislative Commission should have so much authority over fiscal matters, because SB 419 and a few others, including one that provided a nice community slush fund under the discretion of the legislative director of the Legislative Commission. I think this is the wrong way to go. This is not to the benefit of taxpayers. And I urge you to oppose this and all amendments. Thank you very much.
AVH, next caller.
Thank you, Chair. We have no additional callers in opposition.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear neutral testimony on SB 419. We'll start here in Carson City. Seeing none, we'll go to Las Vegas, and seeing none, AVH will open the phone lines for neutral testimony to SB 419.
If you would like to testify in neutral for Senate Bill 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. And with that, I will invite Senator Don Darrell Loop up to make any closing remarks. And she has waived them. Thank you. With that, I will now close the hearing on SB 419. And before we open the next hearing for people to know, and the committee members, our agenda, we plan to do the work session in between these two bills because Vice Chair Daley is at Legislative Operations Elections in the Senate, and then his chair will be coming up to present the next bill. So we will do the work session in between during that transition. So with that, I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 100. This measure revises provisions relating to elections, and we have Senator Daley here presenting SB 100 today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Skip Daly, representing Senate District 13, here to present Senate Bill 100. So the intent behind this proposal is to ensure that elections in Nevada are run properly, fairly, and timely as provided by state law. In order to make sure that happens, people that have the duty to administer the election process must be held accountable at some point. What this bill does is to establish a process to be followed for those responsible for the proper running of our elections and a backup procedure if the election process is not proceeding as required by state law. Recently, in my home county, we had two instances where the county was at risk of not timely processing the necessary steps to complete the 2024 election. First, Washoe County nearly failed to timely hire a printer to print the sample ballots so they would arrive before the mail ballots. Then the county failed to timely canvass the results of the primary election, resulting in litigation until the county commission finally reconsidered their failure and later canvassed the primary election results. Having experienced these near misses, this bill is intended to create a procedure if any public officer or other person fails to timely perform their election duties. So it's already a crime for a public officer or other person to willfully neglect or hinder the purpose to perform their election duties of election law, but there is not an efficient, effective, timely process for making sure that any such neglect or hindrances don't disrupt or delay the election process. So I'm hoping to establish at least a little bit of a backup procedure with this bill. I do have an amendment which I'll get to in a moment. You guys should have it. I got it to you as quick as I could. So I'll walk through the bill quickly with this. So Section 1, Subsection 1 spells out that the Secretary of State must adopt regulations setting out the process, steps, and time frame to complete those election procedures. That'll set the framework on what the elected or the people responsible for processing the election, so they know exactly what to do and the timeframes are, so they can hopefully process the election in a timely fashion. Section 1, subsection 2 requires the person responsible for running an election to report to the Secretary of State and the AG, and that'll be done electronically. That's part of the regulations. If they will not be able to perform by the deadline, able to perform any of their duties by the deadline established by regulation. The reason for the notice is to make sure that the Secretary of State and Attorney General know if there's a problem, so it can be timely corrected. The second reason for the notice is so that it will be a red flag if the Secretary of State or Attorney General does not receive the notice, then they'll say there must be a problem and they can inquire. That way they will know either way if there's a problem. They send in a notice and said, hey, I got a problem. They send in a notice and said, I'm looking good. Or they just didn't send in the notice. Somebody should follow up. Section 3, or subsection 3 of Section 1 allows the SOS to take certain actions as may be necessary to ensure that the election is properly and timely administered. That includes to immediately provide to the appropriate elected officials with oversight or responsibility to carry out the election duty, sending a notice to them that whoever's running the election is not fulfilling the message or the duty, and we're asking you to step in as the county commission or as the directly elected official to help us with what the problem is. Subsection 5 of Section 1 requires the Secretary of State to file a complaint with the Attorney General's office under NRS 283.440 or 293.800 if corrective action is not initiated with 48 hours. So when the Secretary of State sends this notice to the county commission, if it's an appointed person, county commission has full control over that person, say what's going on. Hopefully they will initiate whatever action it is. The notice is also supposed to be accompanied with, is in the legislation, an offer by the Secretary of State to offer assistance to help the people if they're having an issue, whether it's finding a vendor or whatever it might be. So we're trying to make sure we're not leaving people hanging. If they need help, all you got to do is ask for it. Secretary of State's office has indicated that they're perfectly willing to do that, and in many cases, and hopefully that will not have to come to that. But if somebody is purposely not doing something and then doesn't take it, and the word is initiate, they don't have to complete it, but they can't do nothing. They have to do something within the 48 hours. In the original version of the bill, the Secretary of State would have been potentially take over the election duties, and we said we probably don't need to go there, but we do want a complaint to be filed. We want the Secretary of State to send it off to the Attorney General's office that says these people are not performing their election duties. And 283 is the part that we're going to have the amendment on that says you can't perform your duty in a way that hinders the election process. And whether you have a duty to go forward, you can't just grandstand and not do the work. And I believe 293 is about malfeasance in office. Both of those provisions would allow a person to be removed from office if they continue to not perform their duty. But it takes court action. It doesn't happen automatically. But there is some accountability for these people to not just be able to say, I don't want to, I'm not gonna, make me. This would have the make me part of it. Section 6, subsection 6 of Section 1 requires the Attorney General to initiate an action if he gets the complaint, and it's not subsequently corrected, within 30 days after it is referred to by the Secretary of State. Subsection 7 of Section 1 allows the Secretary of State to request a writ of mandamus if corrective action is not initiated within 72 hours. So we send the notice, hopefully correction active gets initiated. If it doesn't within the 48 hours, Secretary of State files a complaint with the Attorney General. He doesn't have to do anything for 30 days, but he does have to initiate the process. In the meantime, if they still haven't done anything after the 48 hours, Secretary of State can go to the court to say, compel this person to do their job if it's an elected official in one of the smaller counties. We have appointed registrar of voters in Clark and Washoe. The county commission can make the corrections. In the rural counties, you have elected officials. County commission doesn't necessarily have authority over them. Writ of mandamus is longer than we'd like. It may still delay some of the processes, but that would be on the court. That would be on eventually on the person. And I think if they didn't initiate action to correct, they're just sealing the case when it comes forward as required by the Attorney General, that they're not performing their duties, and hopefully the consequence would be that this person's removed from office. Subsection 8 of Section 1 defines election duty. We're mainly talking about ministerial steps that have to be taken. So the goal of this proposal is to make sure we have fair process in place that will have some type of penalty for not performing a person's election duties as provided by law. In addition to the writ of mandamus and other enforcement step that bill in this complaint that must be filed and prosecuted by the AG. Basically, it's do your work. There'll be no problem. If you need help, ask. But if you want to play games, neglect to perform your duties as required, election duties, there will be accountability. And that's the goal of the bill. Before I go continue on, I want to go to the amendment. So we're in amend Section 2, subsection 2C. So originally we added in, so the other parts of it is existing law. So if you willfully neglects his or her duty, or willfully performs his or her duty in such a way as to hinder the objects and purpose of the election laws, you can already be prosecuted. It's a Class E felony, I believe. Under this, when we were doing the timely issue, we wanted to make sure that people were doing things timely. We added the potentially willfully to not, if you didn't do something timely. My understanding, and the reason being cautious about that part of it, is I think the other part, if you perform your duty and not doing it, the law is already there to do that. My understanding, though, is that either Secretary of State or it might be the Speaker has a bill that's going to say, hey, we need to do all of these steps faster. We want to get the election process done. And if we're going to compress some of the time frames, I didn't want to have a non-timely issue result in a potential felony. Let's see how it works first. Let's see if the rest of the controls have the effect and that people will just do their job and not risk being removed from office if it goes that far, which is why it's important that it actually be prosecuted. Because if it's not indiscretionary, then I don't know that there would be any real consequences depending on who's in that office. That's why it's prescribed that way. So that's where Section 2, subsection 2 contains the existing Category E felony if a person willfully neglects, hinders in the performance of his or her duty in accordance with applicable law. So the amendment would remove the if you are late and you don't do it timely, you'll get the notice. You're supposed to notice through the email that you're not going to make it, and then hopefully there'll be other corrective steps before it gets any further than that. So I do want to pull that out at this point, Madam Chair. So then, let's see, where am I at here? Lost my place. Section 3 clarifies that not only the mechanical vote processing devices, but any vote processing vendor must be approved by the Secretary of State. That was requested language that got put into this. And then subsection 10 of Section 3 defines vendor. And that is all I have. Happy to answer any questions if I can. We went through a lot of iterations and discussions with a variety of people on this, and I think we landed in a spot that not too cumbersome, but will give some accountability and hopefully make sure that the election process runs smoothly everywhere in the state.
Thank you. And with that, we do have some questions. So we'll start with Assembly Member Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the bill and the presentation. just wanted to make sure that I understood it correctly. In section 2, the category E felony is existing law. That wouldn't be something new in this bill, correct?
Skip Daly for the record, Madam Chair. That is correct. It was existing law. We were proposing before the amendment to add, if you willfully neglected or didn't perform your duty in a timely manner, that part of it we're pulling back. But the other two provisions, A and B, in the redraft from LCB, it was existing. We're not proposing to change that.
Thank you for that. Do you know if anyone has ever been prosecuted for, in this NRS?
Skip Daly again for the record. I do not. I don't know, but I also know in the current environment and with the things that have happened over the last several years, I think we need to make sure people are aware of what their responsibilities are and what the consequences are, so we have accountability as people that expect our elections to be run fairly and on time, that there's accountability for people if they don't want to do their duty.
Thank you, and good question. And I'll ask our legal in case they do know this answer or can get us this answer, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Aaron MacDonald, Committee Counsel. I do not have the answer. I'm not sure if anybody's been prosecuted under that provision, but I can look into it and get back to the committee.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is specifically on the rulemaking process, on the regulations part of this. I'm assuming that the Secretary of State currently has regulations in this area, and this is not sort of a new authorization where they've never done regs here. So maybe that's kind of part one. But my question on the rulemaking is, it obviously will go before a legislative commission when they're done with the rulemaking process to make sure that we as a body approve them. But are there considerations for the differences between the rurals, like having pop caps inside of regulations? Is that how we'll address the differences between, you know, what Clark County does and what, say, Lyon County or others do? Thank you.
Skip Daly again for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. The regulations, they have lots of regulations. And it will have to go through the Legislative Commission, go through the full process and vetting, and people will have a chance to go to the workshop and the hearing and put their information in and try to make sure that they get the regulation in a way that works for everybody. What we set forth is we wanted to try to define as much as we can in this space that we're talking about on the timely performance. So if I'm running the election, elected county person, we're trying to identify not just there's some issues and some things that are already set in law. You have to mail the ballots by this. We just came from a hearing on when we have to mail the sample ballots and when we're going to mail the actual ballots. You guys heard the bill before we did. So they know some of those things. Some of the other underlying things, like hiring the printer and what's the time frame to do that. You have to have enough time to do that. You have to put it out for proposals. And what happened in Washoe County was they did all that. They had their staff do that. They got bids in. And then they said, oh, well, we want a local printer. And we're going, if a local printer didn't bid, you know, I can't force people to bid. So they delayed it to the point where, at least in Washoe County in the last election, a lot of people got their ballot before they got their sample ballot. Created a lot of confusion, and I know you heard that on the previous bill as well. So there's underlying steps that have to be taken, and some things are not developed in regulation, and we want the Secretary of State to, you know, let people know what the underlying issues are, all the ministerial type issues on what we're talking about in order to timely do this. So it's going to take some thought and put it in, and then I hope it'll just be an email to say, hey, we got our request for proposals out, we expect them back, and we're on time for everything to do that. But there's a lot of steps that go along the way, procedural steps that aren't necessarily defined in the law. You have to mail out your sample ballot. You have to mail out your ballot, but you have to get those things printed. You have to have the vendor. There's a lot of other steps that go with it. So those were some of the things we were trying to set out. Also in the regulation, we wanted to then say, what are some of the things that might cause a delay that's not your fault? So we want to try to establish what some of those are. And you can see there's several issues there that we want to try to address in this framework, so that people know what they're supposed to do and they can timely do it, and we can have efficiently run, I hope, on time elections. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing no other questions, we will open it up to testimony on Senate Bill 100. We will start here with support testimony in Carson City. Don't forget you have 2 minutes, and to state and spell your name for the record. Seeing none in support in Carson City, we'll go down to Las Vegas. And seeing no one coming to the table, we will open the phone lines AVH for support to SB 100.
To testify in support of Senate Bill 100, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers for support at this time.
Thank you. We'll now move into opposition to SB 100. If you are here in Carson City, please fill the tables. Don't forget to state and spell your name for the record, and you will have 2 minutes for opposition to SB 100.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca. For the record, my name is Vincent Guthrow. Last name is spelled G-U-T-H-R-E-A-U. First name Vincent, V-I-N-S-O-N. I serve as the Executive Director of NACO, or the Nevada Association of Counties. First of all, I want to thank the sponsor for how far we've come in this bill. We appreciate the removal and the latest amendment to remove some of those penalties that we had the biggest issue with initially. I think for us, we still have some considerations from our members around the differences in elections officials and how they are sort of brought to office, I guess you could say. In the rural counties, the 15 counties, it's the clerks. They are elected. They often do multiple jobs. So I don't know how that removal from office would work if they were doing multiple jobs. The other piece is that in the urbans, the 2 large urban counties, the register of voter is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, so you might have some HR issues there, I don't know. And so we're still opposed based on that because we believe that there's a current process in place that would handle that, and it has worked. So for that sort of soft opposition, but again, appreciate the sponsor making some changes on those penalties. Thank you.
Penny Brock for the record, P-E-N-N-Y-B-R-O-C-K from Washoe County. I'm in opposition to this. I attend all our county commission meetings. It was interesting that Senator Daley has not been before our county commission expressing his concerns, but he takes it directly to the state to take control of our elections.
And don't forget, you could leave your comments to the bill and not the sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to assure this committee, we have got in place people to, if there's problems, we've got our county manager, we've got the assistant ROV, we've got 5 county commissioners, we've got our elected DA. We do not need the state interfering in our local elections. Elections should be handled at the local level. The Secretary of State should not take over our election duties. Should this happen and the Secretary of State intervenes, it would throw our election process into chaos. Elections move rapidly. I don't see how this would resolve anything. The other thing that was brought up is that there were 2 instances in Washoe County of near misses. Well, the local printer printed sample ballots, and that went very smoothly. The problem became when, with an out-of-state printer from Arizona, we, the voters, asked that they can stick with the local printer or the state printing shop, and they refused to do that. That's just a logistic problem that's got to be worked out at the local level. That should not be handled by the Secretary of State. This is an election overreach by the Secretary of State's office. It's a power grab. We do not want this happening. So I would ask you to please vote no on this bill, and the voters of Washoe County, and I'm sure throughout the state, would appreciate you very much leaving this in the hands of our county commissioners and county clerks. That is the constitutional way. Local control, always, from the bottom up, never top down. Thank you.
Nancy Carlson, Carlson. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for hearing this letter from the Nevada Federation of Republican Women regarding our opposition to Senate Bill 100. The Nevada Federation of Republican Women represents 18 clubs statewide and more than 1,500 members. On March 29, 2025, the Nevada Federation of Republican Women formally adopted a resolution on election integrity, reflecting our members' commitment to transparent, secure, and constitutionally grounded elections. SB 100, even as amended, does not promote election integrity. Instead, it expands the authority of the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, encroaching on the statutory responsibilities of county clerks and registrars of voters. This centralization of power undermines local control and threatens the checks and balances essential to our election system. To be clear, we strongly oppose the amended version of SB 100 and respectfully urge a no vote. I do want to add 2 points. All letters written as exhibits to this bill, which are on the record, all 8 letters are in opposition, and all 273 opinions on Nellis are in opposition, all 273. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate the time to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Mosca and member of the Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party, here today in opposition to SB 100. As originally proposed, this misguided legislation would grant the Secretary of State unprecedented power to remove duly elected county clerks and take over their duties, directly overriding the will of the voters. Amendment 345 has improved the bill by requiring that the Secretary of State follow due process in addressing any situation which, in the Secretary of State's opinion, constitutes neglect of duty. However, our main objection remains, which is that county clerks are elected by the people in their counties, and they are accountable to their constituents, not to a partisan Secretary of State or Attorney General. Nevadans elect county clerks to oversee elections in their counties, ensuring that the election process remains transparent, accountable, and responsive to the communities they serve. SB 100 threatens this democratic principle and is an egregious government overreach that fundamentally undermines the voice of the people. The Nevada Republican Party firmly believes in free and fair elections that are safeguarded against centralized political influence. The authority to remove county clerks should remain in the hands of the voters, not unelected bureaucrats or political appointees. We have further concerns about the additional regulations required by Section 1 of the bill in Amendment 345. As mentioned before, clerks are responsible to the voters in their local community, and inasmuch as new regulation would seek to transfer that local control to centralized control by the state, we would oppose such consolidation. Local control is far more appropriate than centralized, one-size-fits-all regulation. We urge this committee to reject SB 100 and protect the integrity of Nevada's electoral system by preserving local control and respecting the will of Nevada's voters. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is James Gansinger, James Gansinger. I'm a Douglas County Republican. The cities and counties of the state of Nevada have been conducting elections since 1864. And the Secretary of State has been promulgating regulations relating to elections for practically that entire time. I don't think this state needs more regulations to conduct elections. The elected representatives of the cities and counties of this state know how to conduct their elections. This bill undermines the authority of those elected officials. The clerks and registrars of the cities and counties have acted responsibly for well over 100 years without the supervision of the Secretary of State in the manner that's projected here. I urge you not to pass this ill-conceived bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state chairman of the Independent American Party, and we also oppose this legislation. This version, this amended version, is better than the original version because it does provide some amount of process without the Secretary of State directly taking over the responsibilities of the local county clerk. But we don't want the Secretary of State to be using their power to take over the responsibilities of the elected county clerks, which were elected by the people in their counties. They have been doing a perfectly fine job, and they don't need that kind of threat over their heads in order to be responsive to their local communities, which expect them to do a good job. Just the other day, when the Secretary of State had their display here, I talked personally with my own county clerk, and I've met her before. And I think that's important because if you're in the county, you can go and talk to your county clerk, and you can try to get problems resolved. We've had a lot of meetings with her. We've had meetings with the county commission about what's going on in the Elko elections. And I think it's unnecessary, that this bill is unnecessary. How many people have ever created problems that we need to have this bill to correct? There may have been some problems in Washoe County. That's the only one we've heard about. I think we need to depend on our local elected county clerks to do what they've always been doing, and that is representing and taking care of the elections in our own counties. And so we continue to oppose any more usurpation by the Secretary of State of local county responsibilities. Thank you.
Excuse me, thank you. Seeing no other opposition here in Carson City and seeing none in Las Vegas, AVH, will please open the phone lines for opposition to SB 100.
To testify in opposition of Senate Bill 100, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the State Vice President of Nevada Families for Freedom. And we, too, are concerned about the bill. It is a better version of the first one, but we still have a problem with the elected people that the people have elected, the clerks, in the county or the city. We expect them to do their jobs, and we really don't want the SOS's office to interfere with our local elections. And I think that's been said over and over, and I think you get the idea. We, the people, have elected people to do a job, and they've been doing a great job. There might be a problem here or there, but we have something in place to take care of the problems that arise. And I think this is a little bit overkill. So please vote no on SB 100. Thank you.
Thank you, AVH. Next caller.
Cyrus Hojjati, Hojjaty. I will ditto the comments made by the opposition, especially the last two. Thank you so much. Great pleasure.
Thank you. AVH, next caller.
Hi, this is Catherine Ivanov, IVANO Frank.
and I'm in a strong opposition of this bill. The more you take the power away from the people when you move it further and further away, the more problems you create. For example, I don't remember having such huge problems with elections, and I knew who Nevada picked the day of the election prior to you, the legislature, changing the rules for election and allowing things that are easy to create fraud to become a law. That's the embarrassment. That's what needs to be changed. If you want to have good elections, just go back to the old system where we didn't have all the problems. The more you try to solve a problem, the more problems you're creating. So when it's not broken, don't fix it. Now you broke it on so many pieces, you're trying to fix it and you're only making it smaller and smaller pieces like a dust. So please, I urge you to vote no to this. And if you want to really bring the believer in the system again, bring back the old rules. No mass mailing to everybody and their dog. It's ridiculous what you guys have done. You made a mockery out of Nevada. The last president was known before Nevada ever knew who we voted for. You made Nevada absolutely irrelevant with your encroaching rules. I have no words. I apologize, but I'm very passionate about this subject. I know you're trying your best, but that is not the one. Please vote no. Thank you and have a lovely day.
AVH, next caller.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again, OSCARWILLIAMS. I am opposed to SB 100. There's a lot of discussion here about duty, ministerial roles, so on and so forth, and I believe it's been grossly misinterpreted and misapplied. Please allow me to explain. NRS 293387, it's got two main parts. One is you got to do the canvass within 10 days, and yet there is no penalty for delay or denial of the canvass. Secretary of State noted that in the writ of mandamus, and that is consistent with the rights of county commissioners to vote their conscience. That right, by the way, has been well adjudicated through the Nevada Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of Nevada Commission on Ethics versus Kerrigan. Kerrigan spelled Carrrigan, citation 564 U.S. 117 from 2011. And it comes down to this. County commissioners' vote is protected speech. No legislation shall dilute or deprive the county commissioners of their protected speech, which is the canvass of the vote that they can deny or delay or approve. The other part of it is this issue of discretionary duty or whatnot. All right, well, 293387, NRS 293387 at 2A, let me read this. Making its canvass, the board shall note separately any clerical errors discovered. Now, in the 2024 general, there were two errors in the election. In fact, the Secretary of State came out with a press release memorializing one and saying, oh, it was just a clerical error. That's great. And the Register of Voters in Washoe County noted that error and corrected it and moved on. The second error was completely ignored. Neither error was disclosed to the board as required under NRS 2932A, as I just read to you. Okay? The Register of Voters went to the board the day of the canvass and said that the election was error-free. He perjured himself. And so you've got this bill here that seems to confuse what the duty is, the role of how errors and omissions play into the transparency of the Register of Voters and the ability or duty of the board to note such errors for NRS 293387. This issue of a Class C felony is a bit misimplied.
And thank you, Mr. Williams. You are at 2 minutes. Thank you. And you can submit it to the committee. AVH, next caller.
Hello, my name is Marcus Jensen, MARCUS.
Jensen. I oppose Senate Bill 100 because it represents an unwarranted effort for the Secretary of State to take power from local elected county officials. This power grab is not only inappropriate, it introduces confusion and conflict to rules and structures that have worked well for the past 160 years. The proponents have not demonstrated a compelling need to centralize election authority under control of the Secretary of State, instead of keeping it with locally elected officials who are directly accountable to voters. Elections have been run by county clerks since Nevada became a state. No actual examples that I've heard of noncompliance have been cited, so why take control from local officials? This bill clearly undermines local control. The SOS would dictate deadlines, and if the county misses the deadlines, the Secretary can punish them. The Secretary would now dictate processes, the choice and use of election equipment, and implement the VREMS system without any regard for the county clerk's local issues, feedback, or suggestions. The Secretary would now dictate personnel decisions in the county clerk's offices. He can even interfere with the clerk's job and take over the operations by sending his own Carson City-based personnel to, quote, carry out the election duty, unquote. Additionally, there are conflicts between the proposed changes under SB 100 and other statutory provisions. First of all, NRS 246.010 remains in effect and states that the county clerk shall be elected by the qualified electors of their respective counties at the general election. It is contradictory to propose the Secretary take over the duties and obligations of the county clerk. In addition, should there be a need to remove a county clerk, NRS Chapter 306 is the law that defines how to recall public officers. SB 100 circumvents this law and thereby violates it. The legislature should acknowledge the problems of SB 100 and should it become law and vote no on SB 100. Thank you.
AVH next caller.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Perrine, CYNTHIA PERINE. The previous callers have echoed my sentiments about SB 100. Very concerned that the bill contravenes the prerogative and skill of county elected officials who are put in office by their immediate local constituents. To me, this is how it should be, and I am in agreement with all previous callers. Thank you.
AVH next caller.
Hi, Yolanda Kanak, YOLANDA, SMKNAAK. I please vote no on the amended SB 100. It's an overreach of the Secretary of State Attorney General. So please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, AVH next caller.
Thank you, Chair. We have no additional callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will now move to neutral testimony on SB 100. Seeing no one coming to the tables in Carson City as well as in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone line for neutral to SB 100.
If you would like to testify in neutral for Senate Bill 100, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Caller, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Caller with the last 3 digits, 527, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Chair, it seems that we're having issues with this caller unmuting, and we have no additional callers for neutral.
Thank you. And caller, feel free to turn in your comments to the committee within 24 hours. Okay, with that, I will now invite Senator Daley up to make any closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, Skip Daly for the record. Just a couple of comments on some of the testimony. As far as NACO goes, I did everything I could to get them to where we hopefully would be there if they still have some issues. I know the one question about they have multiple duties. They're only elected to one office. They have responsibility in all of those offices, and if they're neglect or not performing any of those duties, they get removed from the one office they were elected to, regardless of which duty it was. So I don't think that's really an issue. I think someone's just throwing spaghetti at the wall at this point. And then some of the other issues, and you keep hearing about the local elected clerks and the will of the people, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm assuming that all of the people that came up believe in the Constitution of the state, and under the state, the legislature, every single county that's in existence today is authorized and created by the legislature. Every county clerk in that position and what the county clerk's duties are, how they get elected, et cetera, was also all established by and under the authority of the legislature. So if we're all talking about the will of the people and the will of the voters, I believe we were all elected by the will of the people and the will of the voters, so the actions that we may take is the will of the people. Some people may disagree, and I'm perfectly fine facing the voters in my district in Washoe County based on moving forward. And I don't think we should wait in this environment, in this day and age, over all of the issues we had over election integrity and timing and false narratives about all of it. You know what I'm talking about. That we should wait for something to happen. I think we're just putting in a fail-safe, telling people, do your duty in a timely fashion. We'll offer help. This is not a power grab by the Secretary of State or the Attorney General office. If you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at me. I'm the one that put the bill in. I'm the one advocating for it. I'm asking for support from the legislature under the state's constitution to perform the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will now close the hearing on SB 100. Seeing that Chair Ornschall is here, we will continue to hearing SB 428, and we will conclude our meeting today with the work session. So I will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 428. This measure revises provisions relating to public office. We have Senator Ornschall presenting SB 428 as well as a co-presenter today. So you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Mosca and members of the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. For the record, James Ornschall. I represent State Senate District 21 down in Southern Nevada. I'm very blessed to have co-presenting with me down in Southern Nevada, Christina Giunciliani, former chair of this committee. She chaired the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, as well as many other committees, and former Clark County Commissioner for District E. And during the interim, former Assembly member, former Commissioner Giunciliani and I got to talking about different things that we were seeing in our community and around the country, and that's kind of the genesis of Senate Bill 428. Certainly wanting to run or be appointed and serve and represent our neighbors in a representative democracy is a very noble thing. Senate Bill 428 tries to make sure that those representatives continue to reside in the districts they represent, and it tries to strengthen the laws regarding residency. With your permission, Chair Mosca, I'd like to turn it over to former Assembly Member Giunciliani, and then I'm happy to walk through the bill and stand for any questions.
Yes, please. And I'd like to know, we typically now we have 3 former chairs of legislative operations and elections here today. So good to see you, and you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Chris Giunciliani for the record. As Senator Ornschall and I were discussing this bill, I want to just thank him again for putting the bill legislation in. He, like all of you, will see the merit in passing this legislation to further protect voting integrity by making sure that individuals that run for office or re-election actually live in their district or ward. It is a nonpartisan housekeeping bill to tighten several loopholes in statute. For a bit of history, I believe it was 1999, and I was chairing elections and ethics, and issues arose about how to better define residency. I was struggling with the language and asked Senator Raggio for his advice. He directed me to Black's Law Dictionary, and the language I and others developed became the current language in law, which is defined as where you actually, as opposed to constructively, reside. Basically, it's where you lay your head at night. It's where your pets are, where your driver's license is issued, and so forth. In section 71B, which is current law, it states the public policy that this was to avoid sham residences. And it further delineates how to show one actually proves where they reside. We tried to be very clear, especially if one had to go to court. What is added in SB 428 includes now the term "and continues to reside," and it now includes appointees as well, and additional language to the oaths of office. NRS currently recognizes that one may own more than one home, but you must actually reside at the address you state for the purposes for filing and remaining in office. I personally filed a written complaint with the DA and AG, and 5 school trustees sent a letter to the DA about Trustee Williams not only no longer residing in her district, but she was living out of state and was being allowed to call in and cast votes at CCSD meetings. It became clear there was no public process to file. Even though I never got a response from the DA or AG, the 5 trustees finally found out that Metro was investigating, and I found out that Metro has a unit to investigate public integrity, which is great. The bill now states that a complainant must be not notified that the investigation has been taken up. The bill most importantly adds language to the oath of office. I got this language from the city of Las Vegas. It had been added to their actual current oath of office, and I applaud them and felt that it should be represented statewide. It will lead to more ethical behavior. Please support this much-needed clarification of intent to better protect the integrity of elections. It's the voters' expectation when casting a vote that you actually reside and continue to reside in the area you are representing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chair Mosca, if I may briefly walk through the bill, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Senate Bill 428 adds the obligation of an elected official to maintain legal residency to Nevada's public policy declaration concerning residency. Any change of address will be made to the appointing authority or the filing officer. Senate Bill 428 requires all members of the legislature and other public officers, including municipal officers, to swear additional oaths, including that they will relinquish office due to an event causing a vacancy prescribed by law. The new oaths requirement does not apply to current office holders. Additionally, except for certain confidential information, a candidate's proof of identity and residency information is a public record under the bill. In addition, the certified candidate list exchanged between state and local election officials must contain the candidate's actual residence. Depending upon the jurisdiction, electors may file a challenge with the Attorney General or the District Attorney for that county concerning a possible vacancy due to a residency issue, and that elector must be notified of the challenge hearing. If vacancies for a nominee to a partisan office occur after the primary, but prior to a certain date in July, the nominee's political party may select a replacement candidate. For legislative districts occupying more than one county, the county commissioners may jointly select a candidate under the procedure set out in statute. For vacancies occurring after the July deadline, the nominee's name remains on the ballot and a vacancy exists if that person is to be elected. For vacancies in a city general election occurring after the July deadline for such elections, the nominee's name will likewise remain on the ballot, and if elected, a vacancy exists. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? We'll start with Assemblymember Miller.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. And thank you, former Assemblywoman and County Commissioner, for bringing this forward as well. As you both know, including most of us up here, this isn't a new issue. We've had this issue occur. It occurs, right? It even occurred in my district before I was first elected back in 2016, where the person lived there before and then moved to another district and was still trying to hold the seat. And so my question is, because I've also seen situations where people go on extended travel for like months at a time, or stay up in Carson City for months at a time after session's over. Carson's beautiful, right? And the summer's a tad bit cooler. So I was just wondering, where it seems pretty clear in the bill that when we're discussing, actually where your residential address is, where you lay your head at night, where you pay your bills, where your pets are, all that kind of stuff. But what about those gray areas where, because it could be argued if you're staying, regardless of what your driver's license says, right? We know an issue we have in Nevada. People move here and they're still keeping their driver's license and their registrations and stuff in other states. So I don't know if just the driver's license alone secures where someone lives, but what about those situations where people, electeds, are gone for an extended amount of time out of their district? Continual, I'm not saying lots of vacations, but, continual.
Thank you, James Ornshaw, Senate 21, through you, Chair Mosca, to Assemblywoman Miller. And I consulted
You could
with
go direct, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I did consult with the legal division just to be sure about the difference between actual residence and constructive residence. And, we do demand actual residence in the statute. Certainly, I think that if an office holder, let's say an elector, filed a challenge and said, I haven't seen so-and-so pick up the newspaper or pick up their mail in months, and let's say they decided to stay in Carson City for the summer because they didn't think they could handle the Vegas summer for whatever reason. Certainly then I think that office holder would be able to argue that the seat's not vacant, that this is not, they haven't moved up to another place. But I think that would be a question that if they argue that it's not vacant, that it might be for a court to decide if there is a challenge, if the elector goes to the Attorney General or the District Attorney. And if there's any point I've missed, I'll defer to Commissioner Jen Kiliani too, to jump in and tag her in, because maybe there's a point I'm missing on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I would say that currently it lays out in section 293-112-65 all the different ways that you prove that you are a resident of your area. Because you're an elected official and you go to Carson City, that is not counted against you. At least that was what we were told back when we first put this language in line. You can have a vacation home. That's fine. You can have, if you can afford it, as many homes as you wish to. But if you are running for an office, you must declare where your residence is for the purpose of that office. And if you plan on being gone for a year out of the year of your time, I think you would be subject to someone filing a complaint, and then the courts would have to be the ones to take a look at that part of it. I think in the long run, you have to use common sense, and that's what we tried to do as we applied. If you look at through sections 5, subsection 5, there are, or 6 actually, there are 14 different steps that you can use to be able to formulate that. But you're absolutely correct, Assemblywoman Miller. We had Andrew Martin, we had Alex Asifa, we have had many individuals. I even filed a complaint on a councilman in Henderson who was flying in and even provided the charter flight name and numbers, and nobody bothered to do anything with that. To me, that's what's reprehensible. If you want to elect and represent a body, then you should be representing that district. And if something happens, when I was sitting at the swearing in the city of Las Vegas, that's where I heard the oath language, and I went, oh, that makes sense, because it puts it more into your mind that you are now making an additional commitment. And that commitment is, hey, because of a short-term circumstance, I'm moving in my district. Then you just let them know and you're fine. If you're moving out of your district, you are choosing to no longer represent that. And I think that that's very important to the public to know that they're not having somebody that's just a post office box, which has happened unfortunately in the past.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Cole.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So my question is in section 3, subsection 2, where we're talking about I guess it would be a resident or somebody who's making the challenge, right? Saying, hey, I know upon my own recognizance or determination that probable cause exists to support my challenge, file pursuant to subsection 3. So this is the elector with knowledge. So my question is, in that standard of proof, which seems different than other standards of proof when it comes to like voter integrity and whatnot. There are some groups that have been doing challenges to voter roll cleanups and whatnot. And they run into issues where it required personal knowledge, and the person who had to file the challenge was literally living in the same precinct as that voter. And so what you're proposing seems to make a lot more sense. I'm just wondering if, this language could be added in other places where we're trying to do things to make things better for our elections. But
Madam Chair, members of the committee, to Assemblymember Cole, sorry, I forgot the name changes on the titles. I apologize to everybody. I think I said Assemblywoman. Yes, that is exactly. I was trying to drill down to where I had personal information and I could do an affidavit and sign off on that. I am aware of a bill that passed without recommendation, which is in Ways and Means right now, which contains the language, must personally be aware. I have some concerns about that language as well, and I was going to write a letter to try to see if there's a better way to clarify it, because when I went door to door, and I still go door to door for folks, the owner would say, hey, they haven't lived here in 5 years, I've turned the mail in. I would file a personal challenge to them. And so I personally knew. But there are times when you have walk teams that are out there. I, I think we have to be careful on, but make sure we better define that. But that can maybe be dealt in that other piece of legislation. But maybe we could play with some language from both bills to see what better tightens that up, because you do not want to disenfranchise people, but I'm telling you, you don't even want to know how many times I've come across people that have not lived in the area and are still on our voter rolls, and they shouldn't be.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Monroe Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for the bill. And it's really good to see you, Ms. June Kiliani. I have a question. In Section 2, subsection B, it says that they will immediately notify the filing officer or appointing authority upon the change of address. Would you object to putting a specific date, like immediately, but no later than 3 days or 5 days from the date of moving, or have to tell it within a certain amount of time so that a person's locked into, you have 10 days to change your address or 5 days to change your address? I think just saying immediately kind of leaves it open, and my immediate might be different than what you feel your immediate is. Just your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Yes, I would agree with you on that, because it does leave it, what is immediate in whose mind, right? So maybe you say either within 30 days, because we're all required to change our driver's licenses. If you've moved within 30 days, that is current law. So maybe you look at something along those lines. I don't want anybody disenfranchised, but I do want people held accountable when you're entering into an office.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Assemblymember Hibbets.
Thank you, Chair. And Senator, thank you for bringing the bill. I completely agree that if we represent a district or a ward or some geographical location, we should live within it. My question comes is, how is it not already illegal to not live within the area that and this might be a better question for Mr. Velashan. At what point can I file to run for office, get elected? Where is it that I can then all of a sudden just move to some other ward, district, whatever, and have no consequences? There's got to be something in law that says that you can't do that.
And James Orenshaw, Senate 21. Thank you, Assemblymember Hibbets, for the question. Certainly, I think Senate Bill 428 tries to tighten the existing law and try to make sure that everyone is on notice, whether they're elected or appointed, that when they change their address, they need to notify the filing authority, the appointing authority, and if they're no longer within that district, ward, geographical area they are elected or appointed to represent, then the office is vacant. And I think it tries to make it easier on an elector with knowledge of that vacancy to try to proceed with that and not try to, as we heard from former Assemblymember Jen Kiliani, kind of be, wandering around wondering, who do I contact? How do I, get this to the right person, that so-and-so is not living in their district anymore. So certainly, I believe this tries to strengthen and tighten up existing law.
And if I may, Madam Chair, follow up on that. Thank you, Senator. Good answer, and you're spot on. It is not clear, and I missed it in the 90s. So did a lot of us, because I think we had tried to assume through this legislation, because if you look at all the listings that we did, the 14 different areas, we thought we were capturing how people could properly comply, not anticipating that people would maneuver within by moving out of their district once they get elected, or they decided to go to another state for 6 months a year and fly back in, or they fly in for votes. That's not representing an area. So the intention of this was to close that loophole that I mistakenly allowed to be there. I think it's no different than your committee actually a couple of weeks ago passed a bill over to the Senate. I think it was AB 491, which said, oh, and by the way, you need to be registered to vote at the residence that you say that you're supposed to be. Again, another loophole that we did not capture. Having gone through the whole missing in action trustee made me aware as a public citizen of this language that was missing. And that was the purpose for me reaching out to the senator to say, can we try to figure out how to close the loophole even better? Once I heard the oath of office, to me, that is so important when you swear, once you're entered into any office that it might be, that you're acknowledging. You don't cut a deal with somebody and say, I'm putting you on the planning commission if you help me in my race. That's what the second section says. And it says, I will reside and continue to reside. You can move within your district, then you just notify. Because there are people that, move up. They were in an apartment when they first moved, and then they move into, their first home. That allows for it, but there's a process that was missing. I had no process, and I still don't, for how we do the complainants. It's an acknowledgement that you have it. I was told via a second person that the district attorney said, well, I don't investigate, I prosecute, but no one ever bothered to inform me whether they even got the complaint that was filed one way or another. So that's part of what we're trying to address here. And so at least the public has a way to be able to document what they are finding out or if they suspect that this has happened. I don't know if that answers your question, but it was not currently in law. And this is an attempt to close that loophole.
Thank you, I think. Sorry, my microphone turned off. I'm still confused because in the case that you're talking about with school district trustee, the Clark County District Attorney did declare that seat vacant through some course of law. I don't know which one, and I apologize. I don't know which one that is. So somewhere, and maybe legal has the answer to this, there's something in NRS that says that you have to live in the area that you represent. Or does it change once you become elected and there's actually nothing? Because, like, as an example, there are hiring standards for the police department, but once you become hired, you don't have to meet those standards anymore, which is why we all get fat. So I don't know, and maybe the Secretary of State's office knows the answer because they're actually in the room. They might be able to answer that.
Madam Chair, if I might just follow up, Assemblymember Hibbets. NRS 293, this section does say you must reside, actually, as opposed to constructively. So that's in law. It does not state anywhere that you must continue to reside. And so adding that word throughout was another component of this, that you have to continue to reside within yours. That language missing didn't give us much leverage. I would say it took us 6 months on the complaint that was filed. We were never notified that the investigation was ongoing. And then the next thing we knew was through the press that the district attorney, through Metro, had done a wonderful investigation, and they confirmed that she was out of state. Her daughter had been enrolled in another school, et cetera, et cetera. That was then when he said to her, they contacted her and said, you must either come in and resign because you are vacant, or we will take you to court to remove you. Those were the only two options right there. She was going to allegedly fight it, but then resigned. Then like 2 days later. So and that's not the only person that's done this. There's other case law, and maybe there may be an AGO opinion from years ago too, where we had, it may have been Senator Wilson, I can't remember. They were trying to close some loopholes as well, so that so for example, if you're in the military, this does not apply to you. If you get called out for National Guard or anything along those lines, you're exempted. So we tried to do some things to make sure that for those folks, but having a vacation home and leaving for a year while you're in an office for 2 years, I'm sorry, you've kind of chosen to vacate that position. And if somebody wants to file a challenge, they have the right to do so then.
And Chair, with your permission, James Orchall, Senate 21. Just I wanted to point Assemblymember Hibbets to Section 3 of the bill, which is the existing Nevada revised statutes at NRS 283.040, events causing a vacancy in office, action by the Attorney General or the District Attorney. If you go down to different events that can cause the office to become vacant, Section 3, that's NRS 283.040, subparagraph 1, and then go down to subparagraph F, except as otherwise provided in NRS 266.400, the ceasing of the incumbent to be an actual as opposed to constructive resident of the state, district, county, city, ward, or other unit prescribed by law, which the duties of the incumbent's office are to be exercised, which the incumbent is elected or appointed. So I believe that certainly is what we've had to hang our hat on when someone ceases to live in their district. But I believe this bill will make it stronger and try to make it easier for whether it's someone who is a voter in that district who has knowledge or belief on good faith that there's someone not living in their district, to try to move forward with that and not let someone, be living in another part of the county or state or even another part of the country.
And thank you. We have
Thank you,
two
that
more.
helps clear it up.
Thank you. We have two more questions, so we will go to Assemblymember Gonzalez.
Hello, Senator. Thank you so much for this bill. And thank you, Ms. Giuliani down in Vegas. My question is, so we've had some conversation about, folks having vacation homes, going on vacation, traveling, etc. So what is an acceptable time for someone to be gone in one of those situations and not be challenged that they don't live in their district? Are we talking 3 months, 1 month, 6 months, 8 months? Does the bill address that?
James Orchall, Senate 21. Thank you, Assemblymember Gonzalez, for the question. And I hate to give a legal answer, but I'd have to say it depends. And I don't think, time as a factor would be the only thing to be considered. Certainly, if you look at Section 1 of the bill, which is existing language here at NRS 281.050, and that's Section 1, we are down to subparagraph 7C, evidence of a person's legal domicile, and there are those 14 factors that former Assemblymember Jen Giuliani talked to us about and working on. Those are certainly something that I think a court would consider. And if, let's say, I were to spend the rest of the summer here in Carson City because I just can't take another Vegas summer, and someone were to say, well, you don't live in the district anymore, I think there'd be a lot of things the court has to look at. Am I just staying here for the summer? Am I, getting mail here? Am I, conducting other important things listed here in those sections? But there's no definite time that I'm aware of. That would be, a factor the courts would have to consider.
Thank you so much. And Chair, I have a follow-up if I may. And so what if somebody is active in their district, but they still don't live there? Could they make the argument, right? Like, if you're gone all the time, let's say you are in Carson City for the summer, but you are constantly coming back to your district, would the court take that into consideration?
James Orchall, Senate 21. Thank you again, Assemblymember Gonzalez, for the question there. I think, trying to echo what former Assemblymember Jen Giuliani mentioned, certainly this bill is not meant to prevent someone, if they have a vacation home or own a second home, from spending time there. But if they're going to be representing their constituents based on a certain geographical district, that needs to be their actual district, actual residents, not constructive residents. And that's existing law. So the bill doesn't change that, but it does try to strengthen the law and try to strengthen the power of someone to be able to try to proceed with that if they feel that they've got that knowledge.
Thank you so much. And then my last question is, how do we prevent frivolous accusations? And so I know during campaign season, this is things that folks love to say. Now folks can go on in the media and say that there's like an investigation. Does this bill address anything of that? I'm aware of the many cases that we have, but I'm also aware of many accusations where people are just simply accused, right, by their opponents or maybe the opposite party, and those are false as well. And so I'm just curious, does the bill address that?
James Orchall, Senate 21. Certainly the language we have in the bill regarding an elector has the language on their own recognizance, and certainly not meant to allow frivolous allegations to go forward. And that there may be a need to strengthen the bill on that issue. But which I'm open to any ideas on how to strengthen it. That's not something we discussed in the other house, but that may be a point that I need to look at, and I'm open to any ideas on how to strengthen that, because certainly that can be a problem if someone is trying to, make a frivolous allegation, and this isn't meant to promote that.
Thank you. I appreciate your open dialogue and willingness to discuss that. I think that is a concern that I have, and so I'm wondering if maybe the accusation can be the signed affidavit with evidence that this person has not been in place for this time, et cetera, versus just being able to go and say, hey, I don't like this person, I don't like that they're elected, and now I'm going to accuse them of this, and now the person then has to come and defend themselves with all the things, right? And so I look forward to having that dialogue with you offline. Thank you.
I appreciate
Madam
that. That's
Chair,
a good suggestion.
Christian Kiliani as well, just to follow up. On page 8 and 9, we tried to make sure we were protecting against frivolousness, and it means that the elector with knowledge and evidence has to file with the Attorney General or the DA. They must attach any documentation and evidence, and they must sign it in an affidavit and have it notarized. So then you're swearing on it. So it puts an additional burden on the person that wants to file a charge. So we were hopefully trying to protect against that part.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that, and I think that does that. So thank you.
Thanks for the question, though. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, our last questions were also answered. So thank you so much, Senator. We will now, a former chair of this committee, June Kiliani, and we will move to testimony. So we will first hear testimony in support to Senate Bill 428. If you are here in Carson City to support, please come to the table. Seeing none here in Carson City, we will go to Las Vegas for support for Senate Bill 428.
Thank you so much, Chair Mosca, members of the Assembly Committee. My name is Anahit Bakhshetian. For the record, that is ANAHIT and I'm a research assistant at Nevada Policy. Today, Nevada Policy comes in support of Senate Bill 428 because it addresses a gap in the current system. As we heard so much today, I will not elaborate deeply on it, but we do believe that voters elect individuals that are supposed to present their interests. And whatever that is, if it's at a county level, city level, or state level, interest stems from trust, and trust in its turn stems from proximity in this case. So elected officials could not efficiently represent the interests of their constituents if they're not closely in proximity to hear and see their problems that they're facing every day. So this provides a necessary mechanism for accountability. It clarifies the concrete need, and it also closes all the loopholes that there are in the legislature. And at a time when the public trust in the government is very fragile, this is a clear message to the public that Nevada is committed to transparency. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no other support in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone lines for support to SB 428.
If you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 428, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, this is Linda Cavazos, LINDACAZAZOS. I am testifying today in support of SB 428 as an individual, having lived through this type of situation, both personally and professionally. I would like to state that the three main components of this bill that are just absolutely common sense are transparency, accountability, and representation to the people who elect or appoint us. In the most recent situation involving a trustee, this was a blatant disregard by the elected official of the representation that she had a duty to represent for her constituents. There were votes taken, there was testimony given in certain cases that affected the constituents of our district. Her district was left without representation because she was not there and was living in another state. And it was very evident that there was nothing that was going to be done about it. This bill has excellent proposals within the bill to address the loopholes that the sponsors have brought to our attention. I urge you to vote yes on SB 428. Thank you.
AVH, next caller.
Chair, we have no additional callers in support.
Thank you so much. With that, we will now move to opposition of SB 428? Seeing none here in Carson City and seeing no one coming to the table in Las Vegas, AVH will open up the phone line for opposition to SB 428.
To testify in opposition of Senate Bill 428, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Oscar Williams again. I oppose Amendment 331 to SB 428. Although SB 428 offers integrity in the residency requirements of the candidate, it also adds a lot of red tape in the candidacy process, which can have a chilling effect on prospective candidates. We have a hard time finding candidates, in fact. Amendment 331, Section 2, 2A, includes an additional oath that is, I find it rather vague and overly broad, and particularly misapplied to a residency. It goes as follows, quote, I am not under any direct or indirect obligation to vote for, appoint, elect, or rule in favor of any person with respect to any office, position, employment, or judicial action. What does that have to do with a person's residency? It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Gratuitous language, I recommend you cut that out and maybe streamline some of the requirements. But I mean, I do agree that people need to live in their district or whatnot, and in that sense, I appreciate the bill, but I just find fault with some of the process here. Thank you. That's my statement.
Thank you, AVH. Next caller.
CYRUS, Hojjati, HOJJATY. I appreciate the efforts of the bill sponsor and the former assembly persons and county commissioners, but I will have to speak and stand in opposition. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next caller.
Chair, we have no additional callers in opposition.
Thank you. With that, we will now hear neutral testimony to SB 428. We will start here in Carson City and then go down to Las Vegas.
Hi, Chair Mosca, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, representing Clark County. I wanted to come up in neutral because on the Senate side, Clark County did propose an amendment that the senator accepted, and it really goes back to Assemblymember Gonzalez's question on if there is an allegation that you don't constructively live in the district, how that vacancy is handled. And so we included some clarifying language in, and I just wanted to point it out for the committee. So in section 4, 5, and 11, since I have section 11 open, I'll look at it, but in subsection, in section 2, subsection B, where it says that somebody's found to constructively, no longer actually as opposed to constructively reside in the district. And then later in that section, it says as determined pursuant to all these different sections, NRS 281, .050, 040, and 293C.186. So that means that if somebody is accused of no longer living in their district, there is an adjudication process. That was the amendment that we wanted to bring forward in the Senate to ensure that we are filling a vacancy. For example, the Board of County Commissioners often fills these vacancies for some of these races, for some of these offices. And so at least that brings some clarity that someone was actually found to not live in their district. And I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. And thank you, Senator, for working with us on the other side.
Thank you. Seeing no others in Carson City for neutral and seeing no one in Las Vegas for neutral, AVH, we will open up the phone lines for neutral testimony to SB 428.
To testify in neutral for Senate Bill 428, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Fergus, Fergus. I support the stronger provisions in SB 428 that reinforce actual residency for public officers. Ensuring that elected officials truly live in the districts they represent is essential by maintaining public trust and accountability. I appreciate the added clarity and enforcement mechanism this bill brings. However, I'm not comfortable with the replacement process outlined. This bill allows vacancies to be filled by appointment without guaranteeing the replacement is from the same political party, or it also bypasses any option for a special election, which removes voters from the process entirely. While I support the intent of the bill, I believe the succession provisions need more safeguards to reflect the will of the voters. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, and we will move that to opposition testimony. Aviation next caller.
Chair, we have no additional callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will invite Chair Ornschall up for any closing remarks.
Chair Mosca, members of the committee, James Ornschall, Senate 21. Thank you very much for hearing Senate Bill 428. As to some of the concerns brought up by the opposition, I don't believe that's accurate, that an appointing authority would not appoint someone of the same political party. I will check with the legal division just to verify that, but I certainly don't believe that I think that might be just a misinterpretation, misunderstanding of the language in the bill. But I will check with that, and if for any reason I'm wrong, then that's something that needs to be corrected. But I don't believe that's what the bill does. I think Senate Bill 428 will go a long way towards restoring our constituents' belief in the process, and I think that it will also try to make sure that candidates, office holders, will live in the districts that they represent. And with your permission, Chair Mosca, if I might turn over just a few seconds to former chair of this committee, Assemblymember Jen Kiliani.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again for the questions, all very, very necessary, because you always want to make sure you flush out. We don't create more loopholes when you're trying to make legislation. I believe on page 9, section 4, and page 10, it lays out where if a nominee or someone is vacated, they do have to be selected by their party, their central committee. That process did not change. So we were trying not to affect anything that was current, but just simply close areas where individuals used that to get around, shopping around for where they wanted to reside rather than representing where they decided to run for office. So I do think this is an important piece of legislation. I think it's a good housekeeping piece of legislation. If there's any changes or questions, I'm happy to work with the senator and your committee to try to define it anything better. I do think the layout, if you go back to the language on temporary leaves of office, it does really speak to it already in current law. If something needs to be changed there, maybe that's where some of the tightening up can come into play. But it's mostly on page 4. It gets into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of if you have more than one residence, but only one legal domicile. If you temporarily leave your legal residence, it lays out a format in the current law, so we didn't change anything on that. If you feel it needs to go further, then happy to work with you on that. I do think you have to be careful to put a date. You know, if you're out of your house for, well, if you're in a 2-year term, gosh, I hope you were there a majority of the time, right? So maybe how you define a majority is the better way to look at it if there's still a question with regard to that. But thank you again for your attention and for the questions.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close the hearing on SB 428. Members, we have 2 other things on our agenda today, so I'll now open the work session. Remember, we are not rehearing bills, but we may have witnesses come forward for any clarifications or questions. And with that, I will turn it over to our committee policy and analyst, Ms. Prohl.
Thank you, Chair. Haley Prohl, Committee Policy Analyst for the record. As nonpartisan LCB staff, I neither support nor oppose any measures before you today. First measure on work session is Senate Bill 225, sponsored by the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections on behalf of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections, heard in committee on April 24th. Senate Bill 225 requires a person to pay a $1,000 fee when filing a declaration of candidacy for the presidential preference primary election, and there are no amendments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to do pass SB 225.
So moved.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Gonzalez. Second?
Second.
We have a second from Assemblymember Miller. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Vice Chair Gonzalez. Next bill, please.
Thank you, Chair. Haley Pearl, Committee Policy Analyst. The next measure on work session is Senate Joint Resolution 1, sponsored by Senators Krasner and Stone and heard in committee on May 1st. Senate Joint Resolution 1 urges Congress to enact legislation to allow an eligible spouse who opted to receive the surviving spouse benefit through the Survivor Benefit Plan to receive an amount equal to the veteran's retirement pay after the veteran's death. There is one amendment to add Assemblymember Mosca as a co-sponsor of the resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass SJR 1. We have a motion from Vice Chair Gonzalez and a second from Assemblymember Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? On all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion carries. I'll sign this floor statement to Assemblymember Edgeworth. Next bill, please.
Thank you, Chair. Haley Pearl, Committee Policy Analyst for the record. The next measure on work session is Senate Joint Resolution 8, sponsored by Senator Orenshaw, heard in committee on April 24th. Senate Joint Resolution 8 urges the United States Congress to protect the public lands including and adjacent to Sunrise Mountain, Frenchman Mountain, and the Rainbow Gardens area. The measure urges Congress to designate all or portions of such land as a national conservation area, national recreation area, or national monument, or to apply other federal protections deemed appropriate. Senator Orenshaw proposed an amendment to add several co-sponsors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass SJR 8.
So moved.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Gonzalez and a second from Assemblymember Hadigi. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion carries. I will assign this floor statement to myself. Ms. Pearl, next bill, please, or resolution.
Thank you, Chair. Haley Pearl, Committee Policy Analyst. The last measure on work session is Senate Joint Resolution 10, sponsored by Senators Wen and Stone and Assembly Members Gonzalez, Moore, Wen, Carter, and Watts et al. Heard in committee on April 29th. Senate Joint Resolution 10 urges Congress and the appropriate federal agencies to take certain actions relating to the therapeutic use of certain psychedelic compounds and expresses the Nevada Legislature's support for expanded research into the therapeutic potential of psychedelic compounds at qualified research institutions within the state. There is an amendment proposed by Senator Wen to clarify that the establishment of legal protection against federal prosecution shall be for individuals and entities complying with state and local law concerning the supervised adult use of psychedelic compounds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to amend and do pass SJR 10.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Gonzalez and a second from Assemblymember Hadigi. Members, is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay. We have a nay from Assemblymember Miller, and the motion carries. I will assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Moore, and we will now close the work session. Thank you, committee members who are now on our last item on our agenda, which is public comment. Members of the public have 2 minutes to comment on anything in the jurisdiction of legislative operations and elections, except the things that we heard today, because those bill hearings are closed. We'll remind everyone the call-in number is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 856-0626-0755. Anyone here in Carson City? Seeing none coming to the table, go to Las Vegas. Seeing none, AVH will go to the phone lines for public comment.
Chair, the public line is open and working. We have no callers at this time.
Okay, seeing no others, we'll close public comment. Members, thank you. I know we had a longer meeting today, but our meeting on Thursday is canceled as we have heard all the bills that we currently have heard referred to our committee. So we will see you on Tuesday if we have more bills. So seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned.